Last week, I had the privilege of sitting down with dozens and dozens of intra-African champions, chief executive officers of multinational companies doing business across the African continent from north, east, south, and west. And of course, Nigeria's former president, Olusegun Obasanjo, and the chieftains of the African Export-Import Bank unveiling the new agenda in a roundtable discussion with his businessmen on what the challenges are, a bit of a feedback, and the new vision from Afrexim Bank as far as supporting intra-Africa trade. And we've got a lot to discuss regarding the challenges of infrastructure, information technology, transportation, gridlock, logistics, finance, and inter-party, or what I call counterparty, know your customer. It was a robust conversation, and we're bringing this excerpts of that evening, late afternoon, early evening, several hours discussion behind closed doors. And let's just watch some of the comments from some of the multinationals, what are called new intra-African champions, worth trillions of dollars.
One point we did not touch is to truly liberate our ability is investment into research and development. And the ability to import from outside comes from the fact that we trust the product coming from outside, and we're not looking locally for a product that is of value. And the only way we can liberate until we build all these roads and we build a different infrastructure is to invest into research and development in Africa. So I understand that for banks, this is a long-term investment, but it pays off. It pays off at the end. We've seen it when we invest in SMEs. And I'm sure across this table, we've all come across great ideas that we can invest in and develop. And at that point, we are truly liberated, and we have enough intelligence that we can bring around, and then our product has a true value that we trade. That's it.
It's important for Madam Kanaya to look at the area of currency and payment settlement platforms. That will be a very good way of also making sure that you succeed. How do you get a trader from Zambia to go to Nigeria, taking dollars to Nigeria, then changing back to Naira, converting from Zambia and Kwacha, or going to Stefa region? So it's important that that area is quickly and immediately dealt with. The other that I would like to quickly go through, back on infrastructure, is if you look at the way African import is structured, total import of fish into Africa is in the region of about $5 billion. Of this $5 billion, within African countries, it's about $1 billion, so which means we have a gap of $4 billion. Where does that come from? Perhaps from Europe or from outside of Africa. If we need to increase intra-Africa trade, then you have that opportunity of saying how do you get tackle the $4 billion deficit that you have. But every day, fish that is gotten from Africa is either being thrown away, or there is no storage for it, or it's wasted on a regular basis. So there's opportunity for it, but we also need to be able to deal with the infrastructure around it. Vegetables into Africa as a whole is about $20 billion annually, but within Africa it's about $5 billion. Vegetables is something that I know is being produced also within Africa. Access to information is key. We have to be able to deal with access to this information, because merchants across Africa should know who their counterparts are. Issue of trust, I think we should be able to talk about it, because payment platform will be able to deal with the issue of trust. Why should I go on a payment platform and deal with somebody in Cape Verde that I do not know? But if there is a veritable source of confirming who these merchants are, I think we need to be able to deal with it so that we can have very successful trading platforms.
I think you touched on something very important. We don't know ourselves. We don't have information gateway to even know each other. And that discussion was part of the briefing a little bit downstairs there yesterday about where is the touch of a button in which I have a whole total view of trade and persons and institutions on the African continent. We don't have it. So we're talking to each other in the dark, shaking hands in the dark, and doing trade in the dark. And that's really, really pathetic. If we, whether Afrexim will work with the African Union or the ECA or whoever is going to give us this information superhighway, which at the touch of a button I can see all the businesses in Nigeria and across countries and across regions, and can look at currency, you can look at everything. If we don't have information as our front desk, then some of the discussions here we still have to go through exchanging call cards, which we're going to keep start doing right now. All I need is just Google it up, and I just have it there, but we don't have. What about tariffs? We will have a single platform for all the tariffs across the regions in Africa and countries. We will have a single platform that can deliver that. So perhaps we need to invest in information provision as part of the total package that Afrexim will bring to the table, and put those information to the hands of the folks who are in this room and those who are not yet here, so that instead of 100, we can be 1,000 champions. And I think that would be great.
I'm kind of convinced that Africa's problem collectively is not really inequality, it's not really poverty. It ends up, in my view, being lack of mobility. Lack of mobility, whether this is real or perceived, tends to be what drives even crime, if you like. So to the extent that we can improve mobility, and this is both vertical or horizontal, I mean across borders, vertical I mean into middle class and out of middle class, etc. I think that this is fundamental to Africa's growth. One thing I find is that in 2017 we still have to apply for visas to visit certain countries in Africa. And I know that the bank is a trade institution, but to the extent that it can work with governments to continue to apply this pressure so that we end up with a One Africa effect, I think that will be very helpful.
I commend the bank. This is an excellent strategy, one which we've been investing in for over a decade. And I think that it's particularly good that the bank is doing this as an African bank, while Western banks are still clinging to their declining business strategies, because I think this is going to be the winning strategy in the next 20 to 30 years. My comment, though, is that there may be a need for partners as well as champions. This, inter-trade, inter-Africa trade covers everything from an AU passport to zero tariff to, manufacturing and other areas to cover. So, as the bank looks at doing two things. One is prioritizing, which of these strategies is going to be the lowest hanging fruit and be a catalyst for other things to happen. The second is partnering with other organizations. So, for example, while the bank is supporting free zones, which is obviously very good for companies like that, to also support SMEs and a whole range of manufacturers.
I really believe that the growth of intra-Africa trade is down to the SMEs and around both information, infrastructure, and logistics, because what you do see is a lot of these people who are, in places where we can't see, who do trade that we can't see, and who support the real ecosystem of trade at a level where, we can't actually get to them, are the ones really that I think are the key drivers for intra-Africa trade, because we will always be able to have this conversation, we will always be able to drive our businesses. But I was in Southern Africa, for example, and we saw a company who built a logistic application for an Uber-type logistic application for trade between a few countries in Southern Africa. And they were doing something amazing. I mean, it was absolutely phenomenal. How they were moving goods without actually owning